Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today we are taking a step into the 21st century with the Aston Martin Cygnet. Now I know that a lot of you are going to say to me, Steph, I was hoping that you might put a DB5 on as your first Aston Martin, but look, I've had my eye on this car for so long and it's now up for sale, which means that if I don't get myself out in it today, I'm probably never going to get the chance, because whilst Aston Martin had predicted sales forecasts of 4,000 units per year for these, they ended up selling less than 1,000 across the 2-year production, which means that getting your hands on one of these is a tough task. And also it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because it's definitely the smallest Aston Martin and it's probably one of their most outrageous things that they've ever done, despite looking so mundane at first glance. Now, of course, I know you're going to link this in with the Toyota IQ. They were priced at around 10,000. These 30,000, which might go some way to explaining why they didn't sell as many as they'd perhaps predicted. But we're going to go into the story. Why did Aston Martin do it? What was so different? And we're going to have a look at the interior in one of these, because it's very different to the IQ, and these were built at Gaydon. So they do have that Aston Martin heritage, even though they perhaps aren't an Aston Martin standalone vehicle. Interesting mix, interesting story. Let's go and discover the Aston Martin Cygnet. Debuted at the 2010 Geneva Motor Show to a slightly bemused press, the Cygnet was Aston's smallest and cheapest car, and they described it as elegant and distinctive whilst being individual and practical. It was supposed to be a luxury solution to an urban mobility problem. Or look, that's how they saw it for the Aston customer anyway, who clearly apparently had never discovered any other car brand. Now many of you will cry out, Steph, it is just a Toyota IQ with some different badges and bits and pieces on. But listen, Aston saw it not as a rebadged model, but as a true Aston in their entire lineup, and they described it as such, quite proudly so. Now it might have been their budget offering, but it had many of the design cues that a true Aston appreciator would enjoy, such as the zinc side-strakes, the bonnet meshes, the grille seen elsewhere on much higher ticket cars, and of course the Aston Martin badge. Now there is also a high luxe interior, which you'll see later on in the video, and it's the same level of trim quality as the top of the range cars, which I think is so very important, because it's not just about how something looks on the outside, but it's also inside as well. This might have been a small car, but the spend wasn't small on the trim budget. I think they've done a really great job of this. It was fitted not with one of Aston's usual giant engines. It's fitted with a 97 brake horsepower 1.3 dual VVT-i engine. It's got disc brakes all round, and the car, which was only marketed in the UK, was fitted with a 6-speed manual, and it's got a top speed of 106 miles per hour. And look, our motorways are limited to 70 miles per hour if you're watching this from abroad. You don't really need to be going any faster. The 0 to 62 is 11.8 seconds, which makes it a nippy little thing. Although look, I do realise it's no match for the big brothers in the Aston Martin lineup. It is worth mentioning at this point that they did make a V8, but this was a specialist exception rather than a solid option on the forecourt. But I know that you're going to be saying, Steph, why did Aston do this? It's so different from everything else they do. And it's so different from those racy numbers that we see in millionaires' playgrounds like exclusive London postcodes or Monaco. Well, listen, it's actually political or environmental in many ways, because it is partially down to EU laws of the time. Fleet emissions targets were due to be launched in 2012, which meant that Aston needed to come up with a solution to balance out the CO2 figures across the range. The IQ from Toyota gave them a good starting point and allowed them to do something else on top of meeting those targets, which was to attract new customers who wanted to buy into that Aston Martin brand and needed a cheaper entry point to do so, and also to give their existing customers a second car option or a cheap city runabout. Yes, that 30k price tag to many of us isn't cheap, and in fact it's really considered, but to the typical Aston Martin customer, it's not big money for them. It's all relative, isn't it? Today, very few of these exist on the road, and there are less than 200 of these registered in the UK, which makes it rarer than some of Aston's luxe high-end offerings. It is worth noting, however, that, as I said earlier, they never achieved anything close to the sales target of 4,000 per annum, which explains why the car was quietly dropped 2 years after launch. It may not have set the world on fire when it came out, but how does it hold on nearly 20 years later? Well, let's hop inside the car and take a closer look. Coming inside here, if you've ever been in an IQ, you'll notice that this looks very different indeed. Because of course, when Aston Martin brought this out, they weren't aiming themselves at the Toyota customer, they were aiming themselves at the Aston customer, who wanted a city runaround. Now this was only, and I know I talked about it very briefly when we were walking around, but they were making this for the UK market only. And so they were looking at cities like London, Bristol, Manchester, Leeds, places where traffic congestion is high, parking is at minimum and the spaces are small, and people need a little cheap runaround to get themselves around from A to B. And also families where the Aston Martin might be the main car that they use, but they needed a little upmarket around town runabout. Now this feels quite a niche market, which again, along with the price point, probably explains why people weren't biting at their heels to try and get one of these. However, I don't know what your thoughts are, but as we look around inside, it's a very nicely trimmed vehicle and I really do like it. The things that I don't like particularly, and this is only a personal preference, is that this plastic, because it's high gloss black plastic, not only is it in a high traffic area, which means that as soon as you get a few fingerprints on, it starts to look a little bit untidy and you're forever polishing it. It also just seems to show up every single piece of fluff and dust that can be picked up along the way. Now, as someone who's always got makeup on their hands, and today I've got a fake tan disaster on my hands, things like this just immediately show up all my sins. So for me, that's a bit of an unattractive prospect. However, what I do like about this is the simplicity of the layout, because I don't know about you at home, but I feel like cars now have just gone too far the other way. We have so much infotainment, we have so many screens, everything is beeping and flashing and talking to us, that you lose that sensation of being connected to the road outside you, and you become more ensconced in what's going on inside. So one of the things I like about this is that there is actually very good use of space. So first of all, you've got these decent sized door pockets so you can get everything in, so you can fit all your bits and pieces in. And I really like this almost honeycomb effect on the door cards as well. I think that's really nice detail. But again, this was a car that was built by Aston Martin for the Aston Martin customer at Gaydon. So they had a raft of trim and access to manufacturers that could provide that high quality material that they were using in those higher end vehicles that they could just bring down into here. So I do like the fact that they have used it, even though it's slightly different. Over there, you've got a little satchel, and inside the satchel, you have got, let me show you, a Garmin. Now, if you're wondering if this is just something that's been popped in the pocket, this was issued with the car at the time of launch. And that's why you've got this little pod here that you just pop your Garmin into. Now, again, as time passes, at the time, it would have felt very, I think, a very neat introduction to have that there and to be able to pop it in. As time passes, even 3, 4, 5 years down the line with these, that feels like a little bit of a dated, redundant feature. So it almost needs some sort of blanking plate that you could put into there, because now it's just an empty socket. So for me, that's one of the detractors from the interior that otherwise is very nicely put together. Now you've got this lovely suede effect roof, which feels really nice. The sun visors are a little bit creaky. However, I would say that's probably because the car hasn't really been used. It's on less than 20,000 miles from new, which means that the example that we're taking out is quite marvellous and it feels very new as well. Now I'm wondering, this is, by the way, one of the very first cars I've ever driven with stop-start technology. So the whole thing has been an absolute hoot learning all about it. So first of all, up here you've got a little screen. I wonder if I can show you, pop it on for you. Get all the bits to come on. It's quite new for me. Everything is, I might have to press it again. There we go. As I say, it's all very new for me. So you've got all your bits and pieces up here, coming down into what I think is the CD player. Now I really like this because this is just all very sleek, it's all very minimalist, and you come down into a very simple control panel. So you've got your hazard warning lights, you've got your heating controls, and you've just got a few other bits and pieces there. We then come down into this pocket, so that's where you put your key, and of course it is Aston Martin branded. And then coming down from there, you've got your 6-speed box on this, paired up with that 1.3 engine that I was talking to you about earlier. You've got heated seats, hurrah, it's very nice and warm in here. You've got all the other bits and pieces, you've got your eco as well, your handbrake, and you have got one cup holder. Might detract a point because where's my passenger going to put their drink? We'd be fighting over the one cup holder because the only other cup holder is then in the bag with the people in the back. Now I will say that if you are just travelling the two of you in the front, there is more than enough legroom and it actually feels quite ample and roomy. We've got the seat rolled slightly forward today for filming so that Joe can film on the back seat for me. Thanks very much, Joe. And then of course I should probably talk about these seats, and blimey, are they nice to sit on. They are some of the nicest seats that I have sat on in quite some time in a car. Incredibly comfortable. I love the shape of them. They contour, they sit around your body perfectly, and they provide really great support as you go out onto the open road. Really nice bit of kit. Coming in front of us, you have got a very simple layout, and I really like this. So over on the left hand side, you've got a basic digital display with your time, your fuel and your mileage. So the mileage on this at time of test is showing at just over 16,500 miles from new, and that's all documented as well. So I mean, probably explains why it's still in such lovely condition. Now coming in front of us, you've got your speedo, and remember the top speed on these was, I think, 103 miles per hour. It's just a pinch over 100, and it's just over 11 seconds, 0 to 62. So it is a nippy little beast. You can get around, you can get everything you want. Something I do quite like on this, and I mean the novelty hasn't worn off for me because I drive something quite old, is that I like the fact that just to the right of that rev counter is the little shift prompt. So as you're going through your gearbox, it will just say to you up, down, whatever you need to do. So again, it's just nice little detailing. Steering wheel as well, all sumptuously laid out. You've got your play button for your stereo on there, you've got your mode on there, and then over on the left hand side in terms of your stalks, you've got your lights, and on the right hand side you've got your wipers. And it is such a simplistic layout. It's just really pleasing because you've got enough technology that you've got everything that you would need in a modern car, but you aren't overwhelmed and you're still connected to that driving experience. Over on the right hand side you've got your light adjust, and you've got your mirror adjustment, and you've got your electric door mirrors, you've got your electric window controls in your doors as well. So you've got those inside, and that is pretty much absolutely everything. And blimey, it's more than you actually need. It's great. Now have a listen to it starting up. Oh, forget this. Just managed to do myself over, but it does mean I get to explain it properly to you. So to get this to start, you've got to fully put your foot down on the clutch, one on the brake, and that's us started up. This stop-start technology is all new to me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get buckled up, and we are going to go out on an adventure. Now I've already driven this a little bit because I had to find somewhere to film today because it has been an absolute nightmare trying to find somewhere to film. So busy, but then it is the bank holiday, so I can't complain too much. Now as we come up here, the first thing you'll probably notice is the car is gloriously quiet inside. Quite often you find with a city car that you get in them and they just feel a bit tinny and a bit rattly, and you know, what you get in terms of space and convenience, you then lose in comfort and serenity inside the cabin, or so I've found anyway, especially for this sort of era of vehicle. And as you can see, it pulls away really nicely. It's such a nice, jolly little thing to drive, which doesn't sound very me because it's very modern, but I do quite like it, even though I keep selecting third instead of fifth, because third and fifth gear on this do feel quite close. Changing gear in this is one of the smoothest, most pleasant gear changes that I have ever experienced. Something like this, I guess if you're a rich girl, not me on my £1,500 budgets for cars, this would be a lovely little first car, or a car to learn to drive in. I guess if you're on a budget, a Toyota IQ might be a good one. It's such a glorious thing to drive, so easy. You know when you get in a car and you've never driven it before and everything is exactly where you expect it to be, the pedals are spaced well, the gear change is pleasing, you don't feel stressed, you've got wonderful visibility. That is what you get when you get in one of these. And sure, the price tag on this was quite eye-watering for what it was. I mean, gosh, 30,000. But you know what? I see cars nowadays go for eye-watering amounts, brand new, and I look at the quality and I think, blimey, it's not that good, is it? Whereas at least something like this, it actually does feel, when you get inside it, all the materials that have been used feel remarkably well upholstered, it feels quality, it feels nicely finished. It's a glorious little thing to drive. I'm really enjoying it. I'm trying to think what my downsides are. I mean, I talked about things like this plastic and stuff like that, or this finish, when we were having a look inside, and I think those are the downsides for me. Also, I haven't been in something this small for quite a while, not really since I was driving a Metro, and I forgot that when you're in something really small like this, the lack of respect from other road users is absolutely mind-boggling. Whilst I've been out today, people have been charging at me like there's no tomorrow, and I just think, I know I'm in a small vehicle, but I do still need space to get past. No one's given me a right of way, and I guess that is the downside of driving something small. You get great MPG, you're getting in every small space that's left in the car park, and you're able to nip round with relatively very little drama. But as soon as you're faced with another road user, they just see you as small fry. It's ridiculous. I think that's probably my only takeaway from today that I haven't really enjoyed. Now we are in a 30 and we're approaching a 50, so I'll put my foot down. That is something I will say for this car, is you do not have to stress the engine whatsoever. It does exactly what you need it to do. It's great in that respect. It doesn't feel gutless, and as you can probably feel, we're going across some pretty hairy roads, and yet the suspension is holding its own in a way that you would expect from a much more expensive car. It's quite good like that, really. I do really like it. I think it's just that lack of respect from other road users. It's this material used here that I don't like. And I guess as well, I should probably mention about the back seats and lack of boot space. Because yes, whilst we're in a car that is incredibly well sized for city driving, what you get in terms of having a vehicle that you can get into every space, you'll be able to parallel park without breaking into a sweat. You lose, you don't have any boot space. So if you're doing any food shopping, it's got to sit next to you here, or you have to try and jimmy it in behind the seats. For me, don't really like that. That takes away for me, and I'm not really that keen. And so I'll probably stick in something bigger. And I guess that some of the other smaller vehicles of the era and that you can look at in that sort of city market, they do have a better boot offering. I mean, sure, I showed you it with the seats folded down, so you can see how it looks. And you can see that you can get plenty of stuff inside if you fold the seats down, if you open it up from the back. But do you want that palaver of folding the seats down every time? Maybe not. And I like to take all my friends out on days out. And I guess that with that lack of space in the back, I don't have that luxury of being able to take my friends out. So if that's a concern for you, that's something to bear in mind. Now you can still get all the various bits and pieces, the bits that it shares with the Toyota IQ, you can get all of those still. They're really not difficult to find at all. Plenty of people will work on these. If you're watching one of these, if you're watching this video and thinking, I would like to own one of those, and owning something like this where it's the Aston Martin badged version, it's going to hold its value, because for collectors and people that love a specialist, or I hate this word, but we're going to use it, quirky vehicle, they will always have a market. And it's something that you can enjoy at a car show, because so many people today have looked and been like, wait, what? And if you take it to a car show, people will appreciate it for its provenance and its interest in its history. And you can use it for everything from going around town to taking to a car show. So it's got so many different uses, it's got so many different things that it can offer you for your life, and I quite like that. And best of all, that for the person that doesn't really know about cars, you can park it up in a car park and not worry too much, because they're just going to glance at it and it's not going to stand out like a sore thumb like certain other things do. And I think for the age of the vehicle, it's 2011, the shape and the styling has aged really, really well. It doesn't look dated and it doesn't look twee. I mean, this now is what, doing my maths, 2011 design, it's now 2015, so you're watching this 14 years old. My first vehicle, when I first bought it, was a Metro, and it was 13 years old, and blimey, did it look dated compared to all the other stuff that my friends were driving that was only a few years old. And I guess that's one of the things about car design, is that car design now, in terms of styling, in terms of fashions and stuff like that, it really hasn't moved on enormously in the same way that we did going from the 90s into the 2000s. And that again makes it quite an attractive prospect, in my opinion. I think it does look very timeless, it looks stylish still, and it does all the things that you need it to do whilst being something a little bit different. So for me, it gets a thumbs up. Would I daily it myself? Perhaps not, but for those city dwellers and the people that need to get around from A to B somewhere a little bit more congested than rural Yorkshire where I live, this is definitely something worth looking at. Let me know what you think. It's been a little bit more modern, but I've really enjoyed showing you. Now until next time, take care and drive safely.